Hi everyone, can you hear me? Mic check, 1, 2, 3, please. Is Tom, can you hear me? Tom? Okay. All right. So let's get started. So thank you everyone for taking your time to attend the workshop today. It will be on malware analysis, and it will be quite a basic workshop because as discussed with NTOSS, I will be given a very brief introduction only. So we won't go too much into the details of it. And hopefully the workshop will give you a brief overview of what malware analysis is like, what are the process, what are the tools, so that it can give you a first stepping stone into the field and hopefully kindle some interest of our audience today. So yeah, let's get to the content of what we'll be covering today. So there will be 5 parts to today's workshop. First, we'll briefly talk about what is a malware. Then we'll talk about the software related to it, as well as the analysis technique. Also, there will be a demo, hopefully that will go well, because my computer is quite unstable at the moment. So we'll just hope for the best. And part 5, I'll be sharing the learning materials and resources that have taken to learn malware, and hopefully it will help you in your learning journey as well. So a little bit about me. So yeah, I go by the name of Sosik, as you all can see. There's a few other nicknames as well, but yeah, those are just nicknames that usually appear on websites and GitHub in general. So I'm a year 4 SCSE student studying computer engineering. I took malware analysis last time, and yeah, this Sosik was a name that mostly everyone, including the prof and the cohort mate, know me as. And the GitHub that I contributed to the cohort basically served as the de facto answer sheet for most of the tutorial questions, because I do a very detailed walkthrough of what each tutorial is about. And if some of you have attempted the installation page, yeah, you will see the other tutorials being in the same GitHub repo as well. So yeah, I think if there's any question, please feel free to drop it in the chat. I'll be answering them immediately. So yeah. So let's talk about malware. What is a malware actually? We don't have enough of time to talk in depth about malware. So I guess the easiest way would be for everyone to go to this Slido and actually give me your answer about what are their thoughts on having malware. So let me just activate that Slido real quick in a moment. Yeah. Okay, so now it's active. If you can go to slido.com and key in 472074 and give me your answer, that will be very much appreciated. And I'll be waiting for the answer like right now. Hi guys, please go in and fill in your answers because I can't see anything here. Oh God. You can just go in slido.com and then they will ask you to prompt in the number. Okay, so we have a lot of, some people say that it's, wow. Okay, let me show the answer currently that I'm seeing right here. Okay, malicious software. So at least we have a very proper answer over there. Okay, virus, that's not bad. Bad, okay, sure. All right, okay. Okay, this is a very easy and fun way to describe it. Yeah, I think that works. Okay, so I think most of the answer, I think the answer that you, oh my god, where is it? Where's my word cloud? A nail. Where is it? Never mind. So virus got the most vote. Then yeah, the rest of the question, I think, yeah. So it seems like qualitatively, everyone think of malicious, think of a virus as the malware, but I think that malware, the proper definition encompasses more than that. So let's just walk through a few different definitions of malware. So malware is actually an umbrella term for any kind of malicious software designed to harm or exploit any programmable device, service, or network. So why do we need to be so specific about it? Is because it doesn't attack just normal computer, but any embedded system or networking service data center are also vulnerable to malware. So to define it properly, this umbrella definition works much better. So there are different kind of malware. So there are the backdoor malware, which allow an user unauthorized access to a computer system. There's also virus or worm, which are usually intended to carry out a certain specific attack. And there's also ransomware, which will usually lock down your computer and ask you to pay some Bitcoin to a particular address in order to unlock. So let me just give a few examples of how it actually looks like in real life. So on the left here, this photo, this image over here, this is actually WannaCry, one of the very famous ransomware occurred back in 2019, 2018, around that area. So computers locked with WannaCry will be encrypted with the extension WannaCry, and hence the name. And it will lock everything, every important file on your computer, and this will be the screen that will be showing. So unless you pay that amount of Bitcoin to the address, your computer will be locked. And it was quite a severe attack globally, and its impact cost in about billions, if I recall correctly. Then on the right hand side, there's this COVID-19 ransomware attack quite recently as well in 2020, late 2020. Yeah, so it hacked into COVID tracking devices and also do the same thing. However, the other malware are usually known in their code, so there isn't actually a lot of images to show. So yeah, these are the the two images that actually show the most impact for what a ransomware look like in particular. For backdoor and virus and worm, right? I think it's much better off if we can just go and see the code itself. But that's enough about that. Let's go to the next part where I'll be talking about, as a malware analyst, right, what you're supposed to do. So when you get a malware, you're supposed to identify what malware it is. So what kind of family? Is it a backdoor? Is it a virus? Is it a worm? Is it a ransomware, or so on? Sometimes it can be many things in one. It can be a backdoor and a virus at the same time. It can be a backdoor and a ransomware at the same time. And in some instance, a single file might contain multiple malware to carry out an attack sequence in multiple steps. So that's why we also need to know what in particular this malware does. Does it do just one thing, or it does multiple things? And what are the consequences of each of these steps? After you have identified all of these things, we also need to know how to detect the presence of such a malware so that we can implement a protection mechanism to protect the system from being attacked again. So that is just an umbrella view of what a malware analyst does. But I don't think that goes satisfy anyone's curiosity. So today we'll be going through a bit of what it actually looks like in software, and I'll be going through it in the demo. So stay tuned for that. And for that purpose, let's just pretend that we are all malware analysts for the next 45 minutes or so. Hopefully I can give you a very detailed look into what a malware analyst look like, the theory behind it, and as well as what's the day-to-day life of their work. And in order to in order to do that, I will need to go through the technique as well as the tools that a malware analyst will use. So let's just get started right in. In order to perform an analysis on a malware, there are three main techniques: the static analysis, dynamic analysis, and reverse engineering. So these are the three main techniques. There are more, but for the purpose of the workshop today, this will be most of the work that a junior malware analyst will be focused on. And by mastering this, I suppose that you can get into a junior role in some malware analyst company, or just pen testing in general. So for each of the analysis technique, right, there are actually different tools related to the technique. So this is just an example of what each tools are available under each technique. You don't have to know them all, but it's just to give you an example of the tool set that a malware analyst carry around. And of course, as usual, some of them are paid, so it's not free, especially like the IDA Pro that you can see here. Now, it costs about $2,000 subscription in US dollars. So yeah, sometimes in order to break through to an industry, you need to pay for it, and it's quite painful. But the good thing is that the rest of the tool on this slide here, right, are actually free. So String, Flaws, PI, DP Studio, and the rest of the squad are all free tools. So the good thing is that the malware analyst industry and community in general, when they develop their own tool, there will be site to share the tools as well. And you might think that, wow, a programmer might release a tool, right? How do you know you can trust it? So the community always work to verify the authenticity of the tools. And sometimes you can have a tool developed by one person. So PE-Bear was developed by an Afghanistan programmer, if I remember correctly. I might be wrong on this, but yeah. So PE-Bear was developed by one person to do certain things. But then the CIA decided to just use it as well. So yeah, you can search up PE-Bear and read the story about it if you're interested in like how the tools are being built in this community. It's just people feel that there are some useful things that can be happen, and then they contribute back to society. So yeah, it's a very great process of being inside here. So let's get straight into static analysis first. I'll be covering the theory a bit for all three techniques before jumping into the demo. So yeah, so in order for everyone to appreciate the process better, so static analysis is, let's say you have a file, you don't actually run the file, but you just read off the binary content. This will actually allow us to know roughly, not entirely, but roughly, what the family of the malware is, any sign of being tag obfuscation, or basically the malware trying to hide itself, any string that, so any random string that is here. Okay, this might get a bit confusing, so let me just ask a few questions before we go further. Please go to the same Slido again, and I think the next question is up. Let me roughly gauge before I go any further. So the question is, are you familiar with low-level language like C? Yes. That's a lot of familiar people. Okay, so I guess I don't have to explain what a string. That's good news. All right. Okay, so for those who are not familiar with C, I will try to make I'll walk through briefly on the content of C. All right, so it seems like most of us are familiar with C. That's great. Okay, the next question. Okay, all right, that's great. That's great. Familiar. The audience seems quite experienced. Oh, hopefully I don't disappoint. All right, and one last question, just for me to gauge start the piece. And I need to start the piece and yes, okay. Is a quiz being shown? Guys, anyone help?
No, cannot see.
Oh, okay. Let me fix that real quick.
Okay.
Okay, apparently someone has answered. Yeah, 2 people have answered on the. Okay, never mind. Guess it doesn't work. Hey, let's just keep that question. Okay, if anyone has experience with assembly language, right, you can just drop it in the chat for me to know. Oh, I think you need to key in your name, then you can answer. Oh, okay. Thanks, Da, and Avina for the assist. So, okay, I see most people answered. Okay. Okay. I roughly know. Okay, then I shouldn't go through the assembly part so much. But since everyone is experienced, or most of the audience is experienced with programming language, I won't be going through the programming concept. So yeah, things like IP address, DNS name, I will assume that most of the audience know it. For those of you who not familiar with these terms, I'm so sorry about that. Yeah, but maybe I will try to explain when the term is not too specific. Yeah, so let's just get on with our push-up. So in order to carry out static analysis, right, you're supposed to use the tools that are fast. So given a file, you're just supposed to run it through these tools and read off the result. So the common tools for these jobs, as shown in the earlier slide, are these two on the left, and each of them have a specific functionality. So some of them do the same thing. So you can see here that string.exe was one of the very early tools where we can extract readable human string out of the binary. So you know the binary sometimes are instruction, but some of them are constant. And among those constant, they are readable string. Things like IP address and DNS name, right? Those are very big telltale sign of a malware, because it might tell us that where does this malware come from and who is it trying to communicate. So by just reading off the binary content, we might be able to extract some string that are super useful, and hence tools like string.exe and flaws.exe are super good for these tasks. So you can see the first 3 tools actually do the same thing. And personally, I like to use Bintex because I started with it and it stayed. But feel free when you start out, you can just go with whatever tools that work for your system. It's fine. Then for PEBEAR, which is a tool that even CIA use, it's used to fix the malform malware. So malware sometimes purposely leave out an important part of the file, right, in order to fool the analysis. But then PEBEAR, you can just fix it back. Yeah. Why would some malware do this is because when you leave all the functionality behind in on malware, right, that's just very easy for analysis to take. And as a hacker, you probably wouldn't want that to happen. So what you would do is you would shift part of the malware out over time. So even if one part get caught or analyzed, right, it wouldn't make any sense at all, because it doesn't have all the information. Only when the 4 parts or all the parts come together, then the malware start to work. Yeah, so there's a lot of malform malware around that PEBEAR probably can give you a better insight into. PAID is just another tool of the trade. It detect a few things. LotPE is another tool, do the same thing. Sometimes if you are on the godly level of malware analysis, you will start to use HXD, which stands for Hex Editor. this allow you to directly modify any binary content inside the file. But it's a high level tool that I don't actually use it often. Okay, so maybe this is a bit too dry for now. So let's just see what the tool do in a few images that I have take up. So on the left hand side here, you see PE Bear. So PE Bear give you a list of files. So when you load in a file, right? So the file here is unknown. You will see a binary on the left. So this is all the binary. Then this is the ASCII character for all those binary. Then it also give you a lot of information on general information, DOS header, a few other headers, section here and there, and also a list of function name that the file will call. So all of this might look a bit foreign, but because it's Windows architecture and it varies from malware to malware, so I won't be going too deep into that. What I can say is that PBear gives you a very brief overview of what function that your malware will call to the operating system. So all of these functions that you see here, right, will actually might be executed by the malware, because at least it's present in the code. Whether it's gonna be executed is another story. So yeah, it gives you a brief idea of what it looks like. Then on the right hand side over here, we have syntax, which just extract out all the data that, yeah, so there's a few things that looks kind of sus here. I can see a stage2.exe over here. Let's just kind of start, oof. Let's just go back. Let's pretend that that never happened. All right. So there's I'm totally malware and totally not a malware. So these string are usually string that, yeah, it shouldn't be there. So if it's there, something is wrong. So it gives us a slight idea of what to look for when we do our later step. So you might wonder, what do we do static analysis? So is that all we do? Yeah, the short answer is yes. So you load it into a file, you see if there's anything interesting, you form a few guesses and move on. Because as you can tell, by just looking at the binary content, right, there's not a lot of things you can deduce from to the malware. You might know that it has a certain function in its code, right? But whether it actually execute those functions, you might never know. So in order to get a quicker, a more in-depth analysis, but in a short time, right, what you'll do next is actually dynamic analysis. So dynamic analysis is the next step after your static, where you will actually run the malware in a restricted environment and you see what the malware does. So in the changes mentioned here can be things like, does it create any files? Does it call any server? Does it call any IP address? Does it download anything? Does it make any changes to the Windows operating system? Things like registry keys and mutex and all these underlying things that malware like to do funny stuff on. So with dynamic analysis, hopefully we can see what is the behaviors of the malware in a safe environment. So this is a very quick way of telling what does the malware do. And for that, we usually have three main tools. Wireshark to measure the network traffic. The process monitor is we basically monitor every single thing that happens in the computer. So I usually use this with Python to just measure everything. Then Regshot is to measure, to monitor the registry change, which doesn't happen most of the time, but you know, it's useful sometimes. So this on the left, you can see the Wireshark on it's being active, and it kind of just record all the packet sending in and sending out. And on the right, yeah, it measures everything that happened in the computer. And then from then, right, if you spot anything funny, you can kind of deduce what the malware does. And the last part, which is reverse engineering. So this is exactly what it looks like. What its name stand for. So from the binary of the file, right? So let's say you have an unknown.exe, right? You are supposed to reconstruct the entire malware back into what it does in higher level language. So let's say C maybe, or from assembly you go to C, or you can even go to C++. Sometimes it doesn't matter, but yeah, as long as you can deduce what is the control flow, the internal logic of that malware, that would be considered reverse engineering. And the tools for the trade are usually quite expensive. IDA Pro is obviously the choice for everyone, including CSA. The CSA guy that taught the malware analysis asked us to use this tool, but as I said earlier, it's about $2,000 to unlock. So we get the free version that technically come with like 2% of the functionalities. So that was quite bad. So alternatively, you can always use Gydra. It's the US Security Department, the NSA invention. It's hard to use. The interface is very ugly, but it's very powerful and it's free. That's the best thing. So Gydra is quite a popular option for people who enter CTF. And yeah, I see a lot of them use Gydra all the time. Binary Ninja and Radev for a few reasons. I don't know why they're not being so widely used, but yeah, it is what it is. I guess people just rather use Gydra or IDA Pro. So there are a few portion of people use the other two, but the popularity kind of not there. But you know, it still works. So in case you don't like Gydra and you don't have the money for IDA Pro, right? You can just give those two a try. And apart from these three techniques, I think that there is a lot of other things that a malware will do, but that will be way beyond the scope of this workshop. And I don't want to bog down anyone with the amount of theory I need to cover in this. So I will just skip those. And for those who are interested, you can just go and look it up yourself and PM me if you have any question. I don't think the Google is very obfuscating. Anything that I have mentioned in this workshop, right, can be Google and the answer are quite direct. So yeah, hopefully if there's anything I not cover, Google will be able to provide an answer. So yeah, that's enough for the theory. Let's just get straight to the demo part, which, oh wait, why is my demo slide? Okay, I don't have a demo slide. So, oops. Let me just get to the demo. But before that, does anyone want a 5-minute break? Please say in the chat. Hello.
I'm okay to continue. Okay.
So I'm okay to continue. Do you want a 5-minute break? Okay, so everyone is okay to continue. Let me just give myself a 1-minute break. I'll go drink some water. It seems like everyone is okay to continue. All right, so let's okay, I assume that by now, right, then everyone know roughly like we have these three things: the static analysis, the tools, then you have the dynamic where we run things, then the reverse engineering where we do the reconstructing of the malware. So let's get to see what those are in action. Okay, right now let me pull up my VMware in 3 seconds. Wait, is the screen still showing? Hello.
Yes.
Okay. Can you see my VM screen, the Oracle VM box one? All right. Okay, so before I do any of those, right, I need to tell everyone here what to set up if you want to try it first. So before you do anything malware related, right, it's very important that one, you have a spare laptop, or two, you have a virtual box. And I think if you're not the industry people, right, usually you will use VirtualBox for most of your practice. But in the industry, usually because the targeted system might be a bit different, their OS might be a bit different, that VirtualBox or VMware doesn't kind of like cater for them. So they have to use a separate whole laptop to just run the malware. Yeah, and it's just what happens. But for our purpose of training and analyzing most common malware, VirtualBox or VMware is good enough. And you really need to run it inside a protected environment. And what does it mean by protected is that one, it has to be run inside a virtual machine. You should never run a malware on your COM unless you have analyzed it. Actually, no, don't even do that. Even when you have analyzed it properly, right? It is still very risky to run it on your own laptop or your own OS, like the main OS behind me. Yeah, because there might be a binary pipe in the comments, and that has happened before. So yeah, let's just do that. Whenever you want to do malware, do it in a VirtualBox or just VMware. But I like VirtualBox better. So in order to set up, you can see that I have a few different versions here because my laptop has been quite old. So the machine doesn't work as well as they used to do, which is a shame, really, because most of my work last time used to lie here. So when you start to do a malware analysis, right, the first thing you need to do is that you need to have a clean snapshot. So what are snapshots? Snapshots are basically different version of your machine, of your virtual machine across time. So let's just say you are doing something, right, on the virtual machine. Before you decide to detonate the malware or you decide to run the malware, right, usually you need to take a snapshot and you describe this is a clean snapshot. Haven't run it yet. Yeah, so you give it a brief description. After that, you run the malware, because sometimes the malware will just destroy the OS. It will totally turn your laptop into a brick. And then after that, there's no way of saving it apart from doing this thing called, you can restore back to the previous snapshot. So let's say my malware snapshot is the one where I detonate the malware and it just hang afterwards. What I can do is I can go into this and click restore. Yeah, so it just restore back. So usually how many snapshots you can take depends on your laptop. For me, I take as many as I like. So I started out with the clean snapshot. This is when I install the OS, just OS by itself, because I'm quite paranoid of whatever will happen after that. Then after that, I have a stage for copying things. So I turn off Windows Defender, because surprisingly, Windows Defender now is very good. So it can detect your malware. So for purpose of experimenting, you need to turn it off. Then after that, this is usually the snapshot that I install all the tools. And for every tools that you install, you need to write down, because this is the only form of documentation that you will not ever have. Yeah. Then after that, you can start getting the malware into your system and start running. Then from here, there's not much of documentation, but maybe it's reporting stuff already. So yeah, to recap, in order to run a malware, you need to run it in a virtual environment. Then after that, you need to make sure that all the tools are installed inside. And there's a few things that I'm not too sure if is shown here. There's this thing. So Windows Defender is turned off and network is host only. What does it mean by network is host only? Meaning that your virtual machine is not connected to a network. So because sometimes it will try to create a DDoS attack somewhere else. So if you ever happen to connect the internet, right, it will just you're just basically helping the malware make it happen. That's not something you would like. So always make sure before you run, triple check that you are not running it on the network connected system. Now let me just show you where it is. Oh no, this thing is. Okay, so this is my virtual machine. I kind of detonated it already because I'm not too sure whether I can rerun it again. So I have run all the experiments first, and I'm just going to show the result for now. For the after you set up the virtual machine, I think the internet has plenty of tutorial on how to do that, and they differ from everywhere. So feel free to look it up. After you have installed it, it will probably look something like just a blank one. So there's a few settings you need to change. The network need to be host only. It die need to be host only, because otherwise you will be risking running a malware yourself, and that is liable under the Singapore jurisdiction. No one wants that. A few other things, shared folders. These are basically folders that connect you and your virtual machine. Connect your virtual machine and the host OS. So it kind of create a pipe to my actual running OS behind. Please also disable this, because it's not very safe. The malware can detect that it can crawl out of the virtual machine sometimes. Those are very advanced malware, but yeah, it happens. So you can never be too safe. There's a shared clipboard. That means it can run here and run there, so that's fine. This one is fine as well. So yeah, for the demo today, I have prepared, I think, 2 samples. So the first sample is from the malware analysis course in NTU, and I think it's CE 4069 malware analysis taught by the CSA peeps. Those are very useful. One of the more useful courses in NTU, and I have kindly borrowed their materials to show you today. The other one is from this course called Reverse Engineering 101, taught by marketing turned malware analyst, US malware analyst called Malware Unicorn. Yeah, so she's very famous for teaching, and she's very famous for her style as well. You always see her at DEF CON. And yeah, I also kindly borrow her materials to analyze. Yeah, so let's just say, let's just ignore all of this. Hello.py is really just a print hello world for, don't bother about it. I just delete it for now. So yeah, so usually what happens is when we download the malware, we usually drag it down from email or whatever lah. So you get the zip file, the compressed file, because under the zip file, right, the malware cannot run. So you can just transfer it anywhere. The moment it becomes the exe file, right, it might be triggered by things like mail system. So it's very dangerous to send an exe file via emails or whatnot. Usually when we send malware, we need to send it via compressed file. So these are what I begin with. I leave it in some folders, then I start to extract. Before I extract them, right, I go check again just to be safe. Yeah, it is also okay. Okay, very good. Share folders. Okay, there's no folders. Very good, very good. Okay, that means we can just open already. And so you see 3 files in here, and under here you see this unknown.exe file, which doesn't provide a lot of information. So let's start with static analysis. What tool should I use? I have no idea. Let's just wipe a random tool, Bintex, because I feel like it. All right. Okay, so what does Bintex do? Is that it will show you all the string inside here. Okay, this is getting a bit. Yeah, so this is what Bintex looks like. So you'll be wondering what we do with this, right? So yeah, the first step is slowly scroll through all of this and look through it. Yeah, it's a not very fancy job, but yeah, it is like this. Can I make anything out of it? I don't think so. Yeah. So as you can see, we already have a very good start of not identifying anything from this thing. The only thing I can see is that this string look kind of sus. These things definitely look very sus. Okay, when I see an exe string inside a malware, right, I can speculate that this will possibly be a launcher malware. So this malware might not do anything suspicious, but what it will do is that it will launch another malware. And probably in this case, it's called stage 2.exe. I mean, the name is very obvious, but in actual malware, it won't be so obvious. And they probably encrypt it somehow. So yeah, there is 2 string here, which I have no idea what they're going to do. And the rest of them, yeah, it doesn't look like it's gonna do anything. Okay, so we kind of stuck. So let's just close this tool and go to another tool. Let's open TBear because I like it. Yeah, so this is the actual sequence of what you're gonna do as a malware analyst. If you got stuck with one tool, it doesn't give you many information. Let's just move on. Okay. Okay, so let's just see. Wait, where's the? Okay, so usually when you see the malware come into your machine, right? Like let's say this file. And when they come into your machine, usually there will be a hash that someone has given it to you. So when I receive it from RE101, they will tell me that the hash of this binary is something. I can't really remember it, but yeah. You are supposed to double check the MD5 hash of the pbear or whatever tools you like against the hash that is given to you. This way, you know that the malware you are supposed to analyze, right, is exactly what you are supposed to analyze. It has not been modified in any way. So the hash proof as the proof of integrity of the malware. It is exactly what it is supposed to be, and it is what we need to analyze. If the hash is different from what you're given, let's say you're given a hash of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And when you run the MD5, it becomes 29F22, right? Yeah, something is wrong. Don't even bother go and analyze that malware because it might be the wrong file altogether. So double check the hash first. In this case, I have checked the malware already and I know exactly what it is, so I didn't check this at all. You can see that is the file truncated. No, file size, a few other things. Yeah, not very useful. Yeah, actually, not a lot of things here are useful actually, but I can tell you that from the look of it, this file is not packed. So that's a very good thing. When you have a packed file, right? Oh, where's my bin text? I deleted it though. Okay, never mind. We can still see it in pbears anyway. If the malware has some mechanism to hide itself, right? You wouldn't be able to see all these function calls. So it will be just a bunch of binary with like weird endings and things that doesn't make sense. But if pbears or any other tools actually manage to pick out all the functions that the malware gonna use, right? Oh, that is very good news because that means that you're gonna be dealing with an unpacked or unobfuscated malware, which makes the job a lot easier. So yeah, apart from that, I think that's all to static analysis for now. I think that from this analysis, I can tell that, okay, the malware gonna do something to the files. It doesn't look like it's hacked or anything. So it's a normal malware. Okay, you can just directly analyze it later on. So that's good news. We don't need to do unpacking. You don't need to do unobfuscation. That's great news. And yeah, apart from that, there's a few strings that I will be noticed later during the reverse analysis. So after dynamic analysis, let's straight away, I'm gonna run this malware because that's what I like to do. But before I run, as usual, although I check it already, but for my own sanity's sake, because I'm gonna run the malware, right? I need to be 300% sure that this thing is host-only adapter. If it ever make a call to the external network, I will be liable, and I do not want that to happen. So let's just run this. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, very funny. So the string that you guys see just now, right, is actually part of the message box that want to print totally not a malware. Yeah, so that's what it does. But is that all? Is that really all to it? Does it not make any other connection or anything? That means that we need better tools to actually monitor this run. In order to do that, usually before I run any malware, I would need to start the procmon. Oops, this is not the folder. I will need to start procmons, and it's way down below this. Yes, it's here. So I will need to start the procmon first, and let's not look at that because it's a lot of information over there. You need to start procmon, and I usually start this thing called fignet. So FakeNet is a tool to fake the traffic in essence. Yeah, that's why it's called FakeNet. So it will monitor any traffic that will actually made by the malware. So do we want that thing? Possibly not. I'll probably just pull out run one.txt. Yeah, this is easier to do. So you run FakeNet, right? It's very simple. It's run from command line. Yeah. Okay, I cannot see it, but yeah, never mind. Let's just see this thing. So you run FakeNet from command line, and it will dump out a lot of information. It records every single thing that this machine has tried to connect and send to the network. So as you can see, FakeNet has actually recorded this thing called definitely not evil.com. Very funny. Yeah, so there's something fishy about this malware. First, it has a stage2.exe, and secondly, it has a definitely not evil.com. Yeah, so this is definitely going to be a malware for sure, because all the telltale signs match up with each other, and that's all we can know for now. And as you can see, this is the major limitation of static and dynamic analysis. It can be run super fast in like a few minutes, but the result you can have, right, can only give you the kind of, it will only give you an overview of what the malware does, but you can never be sure of what it actually happens. So yeah, there's not much things you can do about it apart from actually reporting to your supervisor. Usually after this step, you will create a report and you will write out the important sign of this malware and then immediately log it in so that people knows what to work from there. But apart from that, we cannot analyze it any further, and hence we'll need a new tools for reverse engineering, which is in another. Oh no, why does it stop like this? Okay guys, technical error. I need to restart all of this. Okay, let me close this malware. So for that first malware, right, you can see that there's nothing much I want to analyze further. But what I can tell you that it's actually a launcher. It's a launcher.exe. And all it does is that you go try to connect to that website, get that stage2.exe down, and run the stage2.exe. There's nothing much it does, but unless you know what stage2.exe is, right, there's no point analyzing it further, because the sample that you are given with is actually just a launcher. All it does is get a connection to the internet, get a file down, and run it. The thing is, we have no sample of the file is being run, and there's nothing we can do about it. So yeah, sometimes the report will just be, oh, this file has a few things, it show a dialog box. Oh no, it crashed. This good. What a wonderful day. Yeah, this definitely happens from time to time. Let me just restore that and run it again. Okay, in case that it doesn't work, right, I have a backup plan, so don't worry. But of course, as usual, I try to make it work. Wonderful. Yes, thank you very much. All right, I can move it. Okay, very good. Okay, so in order to carry out, assuming that now you're some years into your malware analysis career, and then someone has done the great work of doing static analysis for you already. So you'll just be jumping straight directly into reverse engineering, because, oh great, why? No, this is not happening, man. Okay, let me just use this file instead of. Come on, why does my com is so uncooperative today? Okay, we shall try this one last time, and if it doesn't work, then I will need to give this workshop in the paper format, because yeah, my machine decide not to turn on. It happens. It happens. I'm so sorry for this. I should have bought a new com. Awareness is not giving me a lot of options. Why does this machine? Why does the WinTime machine so unstable nowadays? Oh, great. Someone want to sponsor me new com? Or it's Two Brain Cells. Thank you, Two Brain Cells, for sponsoring me a new computer. Thank you very much. I'll be accepting donation and patron. I don't know if this thing gonna work, so let's just take a more easier approach while waiting for that thing to run. So in reverse engineering, right? Usually what the thing that makes money out of malware analysis is reverse engineering, because nowadays the static and basic analysis, you have automated tools for it, and even if it works, sometimes it's given to like junior analysts. So it's not, oh, it works. So usually it's not very helpful, or at least it wouldn't get you into the industry lah. But if you have a reverse engineering experience, then it will be much better. So for the purpose of demo, I shall, let me open this thing. Is it here? Oh, excellent, it's here. So someone have given us a file called natalie.exe, and we shall do a reverse analysis of this file. I will not be going too deep into the details, hopefully. And yeah, hopefully I give a brief overview of what it looks like. So what IDA does is that it will construct a graph from the binaries. When the files are in the system, right, what you will see is a bunch of zeros. So these are definitely very, very hard to analyze. Like no one has the time for this, man. It's just too much. Yeah, so this is definitely a no-go for analysis. Even if you manage to crack it, right, it will take too much time. So tools like IDA and Gydra is here, and Ollie is here. Ollie is just a more fancy version. And because I cannot afford the full IDA Pro version, that's why I have Ollie over there. Because actually IDA full suit can run whatever Ollie does. But money is an issue. So yeah, anyone want to support my patient, please do so. When you have a malware, it will have the hex view over here, but that is bad. So IDA very kindly show us a graph view, but currently you're not seeing anything. So you'll be like, why? Is this a malware? Shouldn't be, right? So what it does, what this show is that it's a wrapper for the main function. So the main function I can tell is a call here. So in assembly language, call means to invoke a function, invoke a method, invoke a subroutine, whatever you like to call it. So I guess that this is whatever the malware gonna do. Can't really see much things inside here. So by just clicking on the name of that malware, right? Not of the malware, of the function, right? You are presented with this path. So this is a function that is being called by the malware, and some of them are Windows known function. So you have a function called get folder path, you have a function called get string length, you have a function called create file, close handle, I don't know, there's a few heap allocation. There's a very interesting string here called define the money. I don't know what it does now, but we'll know it later. Okay. So if you would like to look at the graph overview here, right? So on the little left right corner over here, you see a kind of like ladder kind of structure. So whenever I see a ladder inside IDA, right, it's a very, very great start because it will tell me the if-else structure of this malware. So like, what are the decision points at which the malware start to do such things? And for this one, apparently, if you don't do something properly, usually it will go straight to the bottom. So in a ladder, right, if you go correctly, it will go in the ladder style. But if you do something wrongly, or if the malware decide that the condition is not great to run, it will branch off to the bottom. So it'll go directly down here. So by looking at the error, right, I can roughly guess what is the malware trying to do. So apparently the first thing it says that obviously you are not a reverse engineer. Yeah. I am not, I'm only a junior. Please don't be so rude. I'm out of my element. Okay. If I remember correctly, this is a CTF challenge from 2015, where what they do is they give you this file. They have a dude locker file, a Natalie.exe file, and the urgent.doc file. Nothing much to do with both of them, but if you decide to run them, right, it will probably say something about you are not a reverse engineer. So what can that be? So it tried to create a file here. So if the creation of the file fails, it will say that obviously you are not a reverse engineer. The answer to that question, after you look hard enough into the binary, is that it will try to look for this folder called briefcase. Yeah, so if your desktop doesn't have a briefcase, right, it will decide to just throw out my error message and tell you that, nah, it's not gonna run. So how do we confirm our guess? Is we actually need to run this malware step by step. And the tools for that is actually also IDA, but because we don't have money, so we have to use Ollie. Not a fun way to live, but yeah, it is what it is. Right, yeah, here. So in Ollie, instead of showing you a graph view, which kind of give you a better sense of the control flow logic of the malware, what it does is it show you the step-by-step execution of the malware. So we have the start here. As you can see, it's very similar to this thing. So it will decide to call function 4019A0. And in here, you have the exact same thing, but in a different format. So you have a function called Natalie040, which I will also, no, let's not do that. I will probably need to go to 4019A0. So 19A0 is up there. It's so far up. Oh, wait, no, it's not. 19A0. Yeah, so please have good eyesight when you do this because it's quite small. Yeah, so here is the start. And the whole ladder thing just now, right, goes all the way down here. So whatever you see on IDA, you can do it on Ollie as well. But what is special about Ollie is that, let's just say I know that obviously you are not malware is here, right? I would want to set a breakpoint. What does breakpoint mean is that I will let the function run all the way until here and stop. But let's not do that. I want to make it stop a bit earlier. So I want to stop it here. Let's run. Yeah, so the malware has actually been running. The malware is actually running right now. Let me just delete this thing and see. Okay, so now the malware is at this step. Hopefully, if I'm correct, then it should stop and throw out that error. We shall see. Okay, so now the malware has stopped, and it will throw the error into the console. Yeah, so it will now print out. Obviously, you're not a malware engineer, but I have enough negativity in my life. Let's not see this. Yeah, it stopped. Why are you so good? Yeah, so now the malware has stopped, right? The analysis technically stopped, but that's not what we want. So we need to restart this whole thing again and set a better breakpoint. So 4019A0, let's redo the whole thing. And as you can see, the breakpoint is still there, but let's create a folder called briefcase and see if our, is it briefcase? Yeah, it should be briefcase, right? Wrong. Okay. Okay, that's not F5, F2. All right, so let's just run this. As you can see, right, this point is never stopped. That means that the execution of the malware actually skipped through this part. That means you are going through the right track. Yeah, so I go usually when I do malware analysis, I will switch in between the control logic because it's a lot nicer to see things in this format, but you cannot know like what it actually does. So in order to make it do it right, you have to use another tools, or you can pay $2,000 to get the full version of IDA, which will allow you to do that. Yeah, but that's roughly how usually a analysis process go. You would then have to go through one by one and try to figure out what it actually does. So for this particular malware, right, after you know that it it needs this briefcase function to be inside, it will actually do something about the stack. So let me just show it, because in order to fix that bug, it will take me a lot of time, and I don't think I have time for that. So the next step upon analysis this briefcase is that you will realize that the malware is trying to build something in the stack at address 401985. So currently at address 401985, there's nothing much there basically. 1985, where is 1985? It's here. Okay, let's just stop here. Set a breakpoint. I'm gonna restart this thing. Yeah, there will be a lot of restarting for long, but let's just run it. I'm out of my element is hit. Okay, next. It doesn't hit there. Okay, I might have done something wrong. Oh, I forgot to put the file inside. Oof. Yeah, it needs the file to be inside. So yeah, after the file is inside and assuming that everything is in place, which in this case is those two files that you saw earlier. So the boot locker and attack and urgent.doc need to be inside the briefcase file. The malware will try to do something on the stack. And what it does, right, is actually it tries to construct a key inside the stack itself. The key will help you unlock urgent.doc. The thing is, with the key inside the stack, right, that means that you cannot analyze it statically. That means you don't know what is the actual value until the malware is actually running. So the only way to do it is having to run it in the only DBG lah. So you have to run this thing and observe the stack. If you do it correctly, the string will come out as those files really tied the folder together. And as you can see, because it's an international CTF, right? So the degree of coding is really a bit too much. They force you to modify the binary code. So you actually have to go in and change a few bytes here and there, so that when this thing run, right, it will actually modify directly onto the stack. Yeah. And after a few other analysis, you will realize what is actually happening inside this malware is that it encrypt the urgent.doc with a SHA-256. No, I think it's SHA-1, but yeah, can't really remember what it is. It encrypt it with a SHA-1 followed by AES file. So what you need to do as a malware analyst, right, is to rewrite this thing, this whole control flow logic that you just learned about in like 3 or 5 hours of work, right? This entire whole ladder thing, you need to rewrite it in Python or Perl or JavaScript, whatever matters. Yeah, but as you can see, this was created on April 11 by me at 1 a.m. in the morning. Yeah, it was a fun time. So apparently what the malware does is that it will do a SHA-1 algorithm first on the urgent.doc, following which it will use this key, those files really tight the folder together, the key that we analyze from the stack, right? You're going to do an AES on that. AES is just another cryptographic function that those who are interested or have experience, you can just look it up again. And then if you want to know what urgent.doc really contain, right, then you need to reverse the whole process, meaning that if the function encrypt, then you will need to now call decrypt. So yeah, decryptor.decrypt. And after decrypting, I will realize I will just dump it out as a file. So after 3 hours of work, you probably see urgent.doc, right? .doc is a text file. Turns out to be something like this. Ta-da! Yeah, so these are what the tutors in the course CE 4069 actually taught us. Most of the lesson become a very fun puzzle if you actually have time to really look through all of these functions and analyze what it does in binary form, which is really a fun and frustrating experience at the same time. Yeah, but you know, at the end of the day, when you manage to crack the puzzle, right, it really gives you a very big sense of satisfaction that not really a lot of things can replace. So if you are liking puzzle solving, I think this is a great activity that you can do. So that's all for our demo before my comp crash again. Yes, it is crashing right now, right in front of our eyes, right after I give my workshop. Wow, wonderful. Okay, never mind. You have done your work. It's fine. It's fine. You've done well. Let's just close it for now. All right, let's close this and get to the part where if for all of you who want to start malware analysis on, oh, why did I click on that slide? I have to go all the way down. Okay. So yeah, that's about it for the demo. You know roughly what it looks like in the field itself. So a normal day of a malware analyst, if you are a junior, you probably run automated tests using tools like string, network, Rexshot, Wireshark, and report it to a more senior person who, from those observations that you make, will try to reverse engineer what the control like using IDA, Hydra, whatever it is. And once you figure out the logic behind that malware, you have to code the decryptor function, or usually the breaking function, to fit that logic that the malware is using. And once you have done that, it will break the malware, and hopefully using the signature that you have gathered, right, it will prevent the malware from entering the system next time. And since it's code in Python or whatever language that you know, it doesn't quite actually matter, because now that you know the logic already, you can just code it in whatever language you like. So yeah, that's the whole pipeline of what usually happens in the field. And there's of course a lot more details of like how the actual reverse engineer will happen. What are the tools that help them? What are the plugins that help them along? But I think for now, for this workshop, I think let's give a brief overview of how it looks like, of staring at a ladder-like graph and try to figure out like what is this function trying to do, and switching between tools to make it happen. So with so many things to pick out, right, you might, for those who are interested in malware analysis, you might wonder like where do I begin? So this is not the only way to do it, but this is how I do it. So first you need to learn Python and C. So that's why I asked a question just now earlier in the workshop. You need to know C, because if you don't know C, the reverting of reverse engineering will be very painful. So yeah, C is a good thing to start. Python is because most of the resource online to reconstruct the malware will use Python. So it's a definitely good thing to learn. Then after that, you need to know assembly, because as you can see from the control flow logic just now, you have a lot of assembly instruction and a lot of OS related instruction. So if you don't know assembly, that will be a bit painful to pick up. Then after that, you can start malware analysis in NTU. It's a very great course. If you don't want to take malware analysis, or your spec doesn't allow it, you can always take online course. So the one I took is Malware Educon. Happened because I was on Twitter and it just got recommended. So yeah, after that, I think once you pick up how to use the tools and practice around, you'll probably need to attend a few conferences to get an idea of how people actually do it in the industry. I attended SynCon in 2020, and it really opened up my eyes of like what the tools, the same tools that I'm using, right? But the experience, the expert in the field, they use it so much differently. And yeah, it kind of gives you like how to improve your skill, fine-tune your skill even further. And as always, practice, practice, practice. And if you can, try to teach your friends around or give a workshop in the future when, you know, when opportunities arise. Thank you, OS, for giving me this chance. Apart from that, there are also a few other resources I would like to recommend if you want to pick this up. So I think the basis for anyone who just pick up programming language, who know a programming language already, right, and want to jump in malware analysis, is definitely this book by Honig and Sikorsky. Those two are the forefather of malware analysis. So this book has about 12 chapters. You can just do the first 8, it will be fine. And the great thing is they have, if I'm not wrong, I think they have lab examples available online. So let me just pull that out real quick. Here it is. So if you go to practicalmalwareanalysis.com, right, these are the website. I think it's running by Honig. Yeah, so you will have, you can download the example, the malware that is mentioned in the book, right, and try to analyze it yourself. So it provides a great deal of practice for me, and it really certainly helped a lot. After that, you can go on to 101 and 102 from Malware Unicorn. These are a bit more advanced, and she doesn't really touch on a lot of details, but it's a great hands-on experience. Totally recommend it. Apart from that, if you want to even go further, there's of course always CTF write-up, where things get a bit more technical because they are CTF challenge. And those are usually designed to be much, much harder than a normal practice or a normal malware. But it still serves as a good tool to improve your skill. So I do recommend on that if you like it. And as usual, as you can tell from the process of reverse engineering, right, there will be a lot of hurdles along the way. Sometimes you hit a dead end that you need to go up and reanalyze the whole thing again. Sometimes you set a breakpoint and it doesn't run into the breakpoint, it runs somewhere else. Yeah, so you need to restart and restart and restart and restart. And hopefully at the end of the day, you'll find things that the malware is doing, and it in the real world is gonna give you a lot of money if you figure out what it does. For example, I think if for WannaCry case, Thomas Hutchin, after 18 hours, right, he realized that the malware is trying to contact this DNS server before it does everything. So he realized that if the call to DNS was actually failed, basically if that domain is actually faulty, the malware won't even work. So what he does is he go into the DNS registry and he register for the domain name. And immediately, right, that kill switch shut off the entire operation of WannaCry globally. So yeah, just one line of code after 18 hours of analyzing the malware. Yeah, it takes a lot of patience for him. And yeah, but is it worth it? I think definitely by the amount of people affected, it's definitely worth every single seconds of it. And I think that's all. There's not a lot of things I can cover in this workshop because it's meant to be an introduction. It's meant to show you what are the tools, what does it look like, what are the amount of effort involved, and how to get started. So I didn't go into a lot of details, but hopefully for those of you who are interested in this field, you are equipped with the tools and knowledge of how to start, and then you can start it yourself. And with that, I think that's all to my presentation workshop ever today. And yeah, if you have any question, just drop it in the chat. I'll be taking Q&A for, I don't know, Tom, how much time do I have for the Q&A? If we have that. I think I didn't run out of time.
30 minutes.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll be here for 30 minutes if you all have any questions. Next week is on PayPal cybersecurity team. Oh no, I'm gonna miss it. That's a shame. I think just now there was someone who asked me whether I have the lecture notes to do I still have the lecture note? I think I have. Okay. Let me share the notes. Hopefully I still have them. Should be. I don't know if I'm allowed to release the slide, so maybe you can just take it next December. I'm not too sure if the CSA people want me to take away the students. So yeah, it's a bit of a NDA thing that I'm not too sure if I'm allowed to do it. For example, most binaries are on Windows, so all those two have made sense, but otherwise you may have not been able to use x64 only DVG for X and Linux. Yes, thank you, Avina, for that question. Yes, so usually the tools I have shown in this lecture are for Windows malware, and that's like 80% of the malware that you ever seen on the market, because most of them target Windows system. Reason being that government like to use Windows, and those Windows are the operating system that contain most of the money for attack. So most of malware you see is in Windows. But if you happen to have a Linux or other sort of malware, I'm sure the IDA version Pro can analyze Linux malware because it's paid. So that tools definitely can work. Only definitely cannot because it's meant for Windows malware. And yeah, if you have Mac and other things, usually people will have to pay for more sophisticated tools to run it. Yeah, I think for now the free tools, most of them work for Windows. If you have come across a Linux or a Mac machine, you probably need to Google for the tools that is needed. Reddit always have the answer, so don't worry about it. It's definitely, the tool is definitely out there somewhere for you to find. Okay, so Avinav has another question on does GDB works on Windows application? So for those who don't know, GDB is a debugging application on Linux. It's terribly hard to work with it because it's one of the first few command line tools that ever got created. So it's super hard to work with a lot of details. It can work with small binaries, that's fine. But usually when I go to CTF, I wouldn't use it. What I use is instead this thing. It's called Con DBG. It's a GDB plugin that allow you to run Python. So it makes a lot of things more easy to work with. So for those of you who want to analyze Linux malware, right, and you decide that let's go with GDB, I suggest an alternative of PWN-DBG, which allow for a much better experience of working with it because it's Python. Yeah. So I when I go to CTF, I use this thing a lot. Not so much now. Does it come with Kelly? I'm not too sure, but yeah, it's quite easy to install. So please just use this thing. Please don't use GDB. I mean, at first GDB makes sense, but as malware size increase, it starts to get worse. So yeah, if you have a better thing, vanilla GDB is terrible to use for reverse engineering because it's not fun when you have to type things like this. This means that print out 30 characters from the stack. Yeah, but you use these kind of things, it doesn't quite, unless you study reverse engineering in like 2008, then yeah, it makes sense that time. But now people don't do that. So yeah, we have much better tools around. Just use the better one. It's not worth it. It's not worth it to relearn the traumatic GDB. Yeah. As you can see, this thing is much better. Yeah. So those of you who want to do Linux, that's one tool you can consider.
Right, if there's no more questions, I will be ending the workshop already. For the next week's workshop, you can keep a look on our Telegram channel. We'll be releasing the promotional materials there, and you can sign up through the link. And yeah, that's all. Thanks for attending the workshop, and I will see all of you next week.
Thank you, everyone.